This episode is brought to you by Pine Melon. As Thanksgiving approaches, let Pine Melon take the stress out of your holiday planning. Pine Melon delivers high-quality meats, fresh produce, baked goods, pantry staples, and more straight to your door. No subscriptions required, just same-day delivery in a 2-hour window within Denver and Boulder. Go to pinemelon.com and place your order today. And to make your Thanksgiving even sweeter, use code CityCastDenver for $35 off your first order of $75 or more. Support local farmers and makers and save time this holiday season with Pine Melon. Today on CityCast Denver. Believe it or not, the same city office that is in charge of bike lanes, sidewalks, and e-scooters is also keeping on top of our composting, recycling, and snow removal. And we have a lot of questions about these essential functions that keep the city running. So I'm sitting down with the head of Denver's Department of Transportation and Infrastructure to hear what's changing and possibly improving for the Mile High City in 2025. Today is Wednesday, November 27th. I'm Bree Davies, and here's what Denver's talking about. Amy Ford, welcome to CityCast Denver.
I'm so excited to be here.
We're excited to have you here, too, because this is a topic we know that our listeners really care about. We're going to start with probably one of the hottest topics for us, which is protected bike lanes.
Indeed, yes.
So, in particular, the 29th Avenue bike lane, which we've been talking about a lot. And the plan has gotten some pushback after this sort of late-in-the-game decision to remove some of the protected portions. And you've said that community feedback prompted this change, but I'm curious, why the feedback didn't come earlier in this process.
No, that's an excellent question. In fact, I listened to you guys talk about this lane. And, I think a couple of things. When we go in and we do planning, we have a big picture thought about how we want to try to accomplish something, how we look at it from a safety perspective, et cetera. And then we start talking to the community about this. The interesting part for this project is it was done in collaboration with a paving project. So we tried to be efficient with our dollars and how we spend, thought this is a perfect opportunity for us to go in, take a corridor that's on our high injury network and see what we can do to improve safety and frankly, how people move. So as we did that process and that outreach process, we did public meetings, we had a public survey. We started to continue to gather feedback as we were going through that and started working on design as we went. And the public was telling us they had several priorities. How you slow the street down. That was number 1, number 2, and number 3. How do you slow the traffic down on this corridor? How do you start protecting pedestrians and cyclists and others? And then we also were getting feedback about how do we continue to ensure what I'm going to call sort of the quality of mobility, how people move, how they access businesses, how they access their homes, how we sort of balance all of that. That feedback came through those processes, and then also continued to come through individual meetings, through stakeholder meetings and the like. And I thought, frankly, it was really important for us to continue to listen to the public in this. And so we did actually start talking about final designs. And as we were doing that in the final design discussions, we were continuing to get feedback from the public. Individuals who may not have attended a public meeting or didn't participate in the survey, people who lived on the corridor that all of a sudden were starting to hear about it. And they're like, wait, please listen to us too. We want to make sure that we have our input heard. And so that's what we did. We continued to listen.
I feel like some of the pushback, or at least what we heard from folks, was sometimes the loudest voices are not the majority, or they represent something I would say, and you listen to the show, but some folks wrote in and said, this person that's complaining that there's no parking, they have a full driveway and a garage, and we're all, the cycling community is sort of doesn't get the break that the car owners get.
Yeah, no, and I think it's really important to understand this was not one person, this was not an individual, and it was not sort of a specialty arrangement where we're sitting and talking to people. It was a series of meetings and a series of discussions with a variety of folks, from business owners to residents, to people who live nearby, sometimes the silent majority who don't always come out to those meetings and talk about the road until they start hearing about it differently. And yeah, it was important for us to continue to have those conversations. And we did. And I did. And I was the one who very honestly, as the team was working through on the final design, said, you know what? We are going to continue to have some of those conversations to make sure that we hear all voices. And when we do this, we balance all of it, right? And I know that's a tricky word when we talk about how do we use this very precious right-of-way and try to accomplish all these things that we want to accomplish. But that's what we were trying to do with West 29th. So obviously we have protected bike lane for 2/3 of the corridor. We are slowing traffic down in some pretty significant ways, such as doing some of the first of its kind in this kind of road, speed cushions, so effectively speed bumps. every 500 feet along the entirety of that stretch, pedestrian improvements and savings there. And then with this particular area, this area that is the one that prompted a lot of discussion, from Sheridan to Tennyson, we looked at trying to do a protected bike lane in that area. We also realized that it was having impact to some properties, to commercial properties and others, where they very much had some access issues. No alleys, difficult ways of getting around, lots of traffic coming in and out. So we suggested an idea that would have a regular bike lane, then a little portion of 3 blocks of bike lane, protected bike lane, and then regular bike lane again. And to be perfectly honest, you brought up something on one of your last podcasts. You talked about the consistency of like how people go.
Yeah, how people understand the road.
Right. And to be honest, that was some of what I also was asking questions about with our design team and others, and how we sort of created more consistency. But I wasn't also happy with the regular bike lane parts of it. So we went back to the design, sort of listening and talking and everything, and essentially said, you know what, we'd like to do an enhanced regular bike lane. So a very visible green painted bike lane. And then we did something that we've not done before either, and put in protections at all of the intersections through that entire section, which is where cyclists and others are the most vulnerable, and put protections in that area as well. So not the perfect answer for everyone. And the reason why is it's very narrow in that area. It's just a lot narrower than others that we have even down that corridor. So trying to figure out how we put it all together.
Okay, let's move on to our next topic, which I think is going to be something that folks are thinking about in the coming weeks and months, which is winter snowstorms, road safety. And the roads can get pretty dicey here after a big storm. And plowing is also always top of mind. What is the plan for plowing?
You know, the plan is as we always do, which is we plow every storm and our team is out there actively. But the nuance is how we plow, right? You know, it's everyone says, oh, I saw plows. I didn't see plows. Why aren't you on this street? How come you're there? Hey, I don't see anyone out.
How come you didn't plow my route?
How come you didn't plow my route and do all of this? And so we have put together a plowing plan, and, you know, working with the mayor and others, this is a political topic, right?
Absolutely.
Boy, if you don't do snow right,
it was a conversation in the mayor's race last year.
Completely, it was
2 years ago. Yeah.
And Mayor Johnson has made it very clear that he wants total excellence when it comes to plowing and how we address that. And so we have a couple of different programs. So we look at the type of storm that's coming in, and we don't necessarily look at, you know, how many inches are coming onto a road. We actually look at what we think the road conditions are. Are they icy? Are they going to be snowy? Are they going to be snow-packed? Will it freeze overnight and cause rutting, et cetera? And we do that, and then we base how we deploy those plows. So with every storm, we deploy all our plows. And for us, that's, you know, somewhere between 45, 55, 60 plows, depending on what we have in our fleet. They go out every day. They pre-treat the roads, they plow into a clear, and they focus on those main arterials, right? Those main roadways, Colorado Boulevard, they're on 6th Avenue, they're on those main streets. When it comes to the residential streets, that's when we also start paying attention. If we think we're going to have major buildup, or if we think we're going to have rutting and ice, very similar to what happened a couple of winters ago, if you remember this.
Oh, yes.
You remember it. And we had freeze after freeze after freeze, and it rutted in that ice. And some lessons learned that we had from that. So we actually will deploy what we also call a residential plow program. And it's actually comprised of volunteers from all around the city who get in lighter duty plows with, you know, plows attached to the front of F-150s, for instance, and they go out and they start plowing those residential streets. So the storm a couple of weeks ago, that's what you saw. You saw them deploy because it was a big storm.
Something I'm concerned about personally is I have a lot of friends with disabilities, a lot of friends who use wheelchairs, and the sidewalks we know are the property owner's responsibility. And I would say that is not something that feels consistent across the city. And I live right off of a very busy street called Alameda, and often you will see folks who use wheelchairs in the street because the sidewalk is not taken care of. Is there anything that the city is looking at or thinking about when it comes to pedestrian access and not prioritizing cars in this instance?
Well, you know, as far as us going in and actually plowing and or shoveling the sidewalks, probably not. And very frankly, it's sort of a manpower and other thing. There are a couple of programs, though. So we do have a volunteer program where you can sign up and support someone, for instance, who maybe owns a home, who's elderly, for instance, who cannot go out and do their own shoveling and that kind of thing. So these are programs where sort of community and neighbors helping neighbors as we move through that. But as we think about this, I guess I could say it for listeners and others. I know it's a lot to go out, but we really, really rely on you all being and doing your part in helping keep this mobility system, i.e. the sidewalks and others, available for everyone to be able to use. And so we really are asking you to pitch in on that.
Let's talk, let's talk more about sidewalks because this has been a big issue here in Denver. In 2022, voters passed the Denver Deserves Sidewalks plan, and it has moved through several iterations, but property owners will now be charged a flat fee of $150 per year for sidewalk upkeep and expansion. Council agreed to this new payment scheme, but the question is, does your department have the staff and time and resources to get these sidewalks built?
Well, that is an excellent question. So guesses on how many miles of sidewalks we have right now?
This is a question I had for you, actually, was how many miles and how much, what's
All
the
right,
time
so we do
frame?
prices right? Okay, what do you think? What's your guess?
I couldn't.
How many miles?
I have no clue. I don't even know.
3,000.
3,000. Okay.
So 3,000 miles of sidewalk in our cities, not including the gaps. So not including those areas that do not have sidewalks.
Oh, which is
around,
existing sidewalks.
Several hundred miles there. And so when the citizens of Denver said, we think sidewalks and the network is so important that we're willing to assess ourselves a fee and then basically give it to us and say, and to Dottie and say, please take care of it and build it out and make it work for everyone because of active transportation, how we want to move and all of this. And the short answer is that is a big job.
Huge.
It's a huge, huge job. Just to say we have more miles of sidewalk than we do have more miles of road under our jurisdiction. And so as we do this, we're doing a couple of things. One, we're in the process right now of finishing up we're going to start a big sidewalk master plan, which basically says, here's the assets, here's what you have, here's where your gaps are. And we know a lot of that already. And then helps us start to prioritize how we tackle and how we do this. Do we pick neighborhoods and start building out, filling in their gaps first? Do we continue with all of our repair programs, which we will be doing as we do this? How do we contract that and how do we support that from a staff perspective or otherwise? So we're in the process of doing all of that right now.
So you're saying there's a sidewalks master plan happening?
There will
So
be.
It's just a plan about sidewalks.
Just about sidewalks. And it'll be starting here early next year. And so what people are going to see starting in January is, number one, we will start collecting the fees. So in other words, on your wastewater bill, you're going to see a fee that says sidewalk fee, and you'll get billed twice a year for that. Usually $150. Most people fit into that category. And I think most properties, like over 95% of properties fit right in that 150 range. But on top of that, then you're going to see us start doing things. So you're going to start seeing a sidewalk repair program. As people are calling in and saying, hey, fix this sidewalk here because it's awful, we're plotting those all over the city. That will be part of what we're going to start doing and repairing and reconstructing those sidewalks. Simultaneous to that, we're going to start building out some sidewalks in the Gloveville, Swansea, Elyria neighborhood in partnership with some programs that were coming through the bond program as well. And then we're going to do a bigger picture discussion, and this gets wonky, on how we deliver this program long term. What kind of contracted relationship, what kind of partnership that we do with others to help us design and contract and maybe maintain and operate these in perpetuity.
Well, I'll be interested to see, as a person with no sidewalk in front of my home.
You may be on our list.
I am looking forward to it.
There we go.
This episode is brought to you by Unit E. Unit E is an award-winning underground record label based in Denver that specializes in showcasing the best music the Mile High City has to offer. By joining the Unit E 7-inch record club, you will be in the know about Denver's hottest artists, like Los Mocochetes, the band you hear at the opening of this very podcast every episode. The Mocochetes are just one of many acts you'll get new music from when you subscribe. So how does the Unit E 7-inch record club work anyway? Well, it's simple. Sign up now, and for just $39 a year, you get 4 7-inch records, one each season, sent right to your doorstep. This means you get to add new music to your record collection while supporting local artists directly. Join the Unit E 7-inch record club today. Just go to unitedenver.org to sign up. That's UNITE Denver.org. Oh, and if you use the code CityCast at checkout, you get an additional record for free. Happy listening. This episode is brought to you by Pine Melon. As the weather cools down, Pine Melon has everything you need to embrace fall. From peak season produce like apples, squash, and pears to seasonal decor like gourds and pumpkins, they've got you covered year-round. Pine Melon proudly partners with over 200 local farmers, ranchers, and producers across Colorado, delivering fresh, high-quality meats, baked goods, pantry staples, and more right to your door. No subscription needed. And that means you have access to same-day delivery in Denver and Boulder within a 2-hour window. Go to pinemelon.com to order locally sourced food today. Customers can use the code CityCastDenver at checkout for $35 off your first order of $75 or more. Join the movement today and support local makers and farmers at pinemelon.com. That's pinemelon.com. Let's move on to e-scooters.
Yes.
You mentioned you got here today on an e-scooter, correct?
I did. I scooter all over downtown.
So something that's been talked about a lot is designated drop-off areas and parking areas for these scooters. It's one of the biggest issues. Again, I will speak to the folks with disabilities who they'll be in the middle. Someone will park it in the middle of a curb cut, and then someone who uses a power chair can't even get around it. Is this a plan? And where are we at with this designated parking area situation?
Yeah, no, those excellent questions. And I think people see it and live it in the downtown area as people ride their scooters and the like. And let me back up just real quick as we talk. And so here we did the over-under on how many sidewalks we said. Okay, the over-under on how many scooter rides we're going to have this year.
Oh my God, I feel like I saw this number and it was like something so mind-blowingly. I couldn't remember, like 70,000 or something.
That was in a day. So
okay, so there you go.
6 million.
6 million.
6 million rides is what we have annually. In fact, Denver has the most popular scooter program in the entire country.
Really?
The entire country, yeah. So an extraordinary program that really, I'm going to say this, has embedded its way into the fabric of how people move here in Denver. Now, with that, so now let me come back to the other. So I say that, and just for sense, about 25% of the rides that happen, of those 6 million rides, happen in the downtown area. The rest of the 75% happen all around the city. So people use them. I was a crossing guard at a school the other day. The number of people who came up on scooters with their kids and dropping their kids off for school, it's significant. And so it really is part of how we move today in Denver. Part of this in our partnership, so we have permitted relationships, if you will, with two companies, with Lyft and with Lime. And they were asked and required, in fact, to build out corrals all around the city. And Lyft has been doing that. Lime is catching up as they are going through that. And so we're talking several hundred scooter corrals. And there already are a couple hundred right now in the downtown area and then sort of outwards. Part of that program is that we continue to build those out. And then also working with those same scooter providers on a couple of things. How do we ensure that people are parking them correctly? There's also new technologies that we're looking at. For instance, they're using it in Washington, D.C. right now, which will not allow you to stop a ride until you've gone to a scooter corral.
Oh,
so there are some different things that we're doing. We're working with them. They have team members, for instance, who are looking at that picture that you take when you end your ride, where they're doing warnings and then actually starting to assess some fees. That's something you could do. They aren't doing that quite yet. So all of these things to continue to ensure that we have good behavior too on the scooters, because parking is one thing, and then also riding on sidewalks is another.
Riding on sidewalks, I triple check when I walk out a door now, because sometimes they'll just speed right past me. And totally understand this is a great form of mobility for so many folks, and it makes something accessible. But the safety component is definitely concerning as just a pedestrian that's trying to cross the street sometimes.
Yeah, no, it's really important. And, a couple of things when you do that. So number one, what it also does is it shows the capacity of built infrastructure. So when we sit and we talk about bike lanes, protected bike lanes, regular bike lanes, street, et cetera, it's an interesting thing that came out of Portland a while ago when they were assessing, what's the percentage of people who ride on a bike lane versus a sidewalk when you've got that infrastructure? What they saw is if there was nothing, you would just had the street, and you're supposed to ride in the street. That is the rule of the road.
Right.
You ride in the street. I would say about 60% rode in the street, and about 40% still rode on the sidewalk. When you put a regular bike lane beside them, you started to see that number shift. And then you started to see it go to 30% rode on the sidewalk, and more like 70% started riding in that bike lane. When you go into a protected bike lane, the number goes down to 5% ride on a sidewalk, and the rest are sitting in that lane. So the investment of infrastructure is always an important piece, whether it's parking corrals or whether it's safe places for people to ride and feel comfortable and that high comfort kind of thing. But it's also one of those things too, where there is some technology that's starting to layer in. You hear people talk about geotech and geolocating and causing you to stall, if you will, if you are on the sidewalk. The tech isn't quite perfect enough yet. We've been testing it and working with them. It's tall buildings, it's downtown, it's geolocating. Hey, are they really on the sidewalk? Are they on the road? That kind of stuff. But that's starting to get better, and that's some of the stuff that we're actually going to be working on and requiring. Is we're very close to a new contract and a new partnership, which we'll start issuing that here later this coming spring in 25, where we also want to bake in some of those kinds of things with these partners that we have.
Well, we'll be watching that for sure, especially since it sounds like Denver is such a high user city for this form of transportation. Let's move on to trash. It's something we talk about a lot on this show. There's been some changes that rolled out with composting, and I personally have had a horrible experience with my composting. It's been really a bummer. But Amy, can you give me is there any hope for 2025? I understand this was a huge undertaking. Yeah. We've met with the waste people. They are working hard. What do we have to look forward to maybe in 2025 when it comes to our trash service?
I want to answer that, but first I want to understand your horrible experience. Tell me about it, because we'll see if we address it as we go into 25.
I was a composter for 15 years. Yeah. I paid for the city program. I was in the pilot program. The moment we switched over to this pay-as-you-throw, they stopped picking up my compost. My family never doesn't compost anymore because it just never gets picked up.
And because they should be. We should have still been picking up. That makes me wonder. Maybe later you can, and I'll double check into some of that.
It's turned me into a non-composter because I don't want compost sitting outside of my house for weeks at a time because it smells really bad. And it bums me out that I am no longer composting after 15 years. All right.
Well, let's get you back in the system very quickly with this.
But I imagine other people are having the same issue.
Yeah, and we're still picking up compost. And frankly, if a cart was out, we were picking it up. And so I'd have to check into that and wonder what happened there. Yeah. But the reality is we do have something to look forward to in 2025. And we've recognized that throughout the entirety of volume-based pricing, we've been in it for about a year and a half, not quite 2 years now. And we've had a lot of lessons that we've been pulling out of how that system is working. And a couple of them were number one, which is people really, really want their citywide compost. And it has taken us a while to make that happen. And the reason it's taken us a while to make that happen is actually our services and the availability of our services and our fleet and others. So I'm going to get a little wonky for 2 seconds. But what we have is when we started volume-based pricing, we shifted some things. So we went weekly trash. We were going to do weekly compost. And then council said, we think we'd actually like to do a little bit more. We'd like to do weekly recycling instead of biweekly, which we had been doing.
Sure.
As we put all that program together, we started rolling that out and have been working on that. And we haven't been able to quite hit the mark on all of this. And I'll explain why. So we have, fleet availability and how we do these programs and all of this. And for us to manage some of those programs, actually, what we were running was we had more program than we had fleet available and team available. So we were spending money.
Power.
Exactly. We were spending money outsourcing some of it. Yeah. We were renting trucks. We were doing a variety of these things. And as we sat and we looked at this, and that still required us to be slow on the rollout for citywide compost. People said, no, just give me my cart and let me do it. Well, it's not a question of giving you the cart. It's a question of running the service behind it.
Getting the cart picked up.
Right. Exactly. So we really sat and re-examined all of this. We also know that, the mayor, for instance, set a goal for customer service recently this year. He said, how can we improve our customer service by 30% as a city? What are the calls that are coming into 311? No surprise, solid waste are calls like number 1 and 2 and 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, right? And it's everything from, hey, you missed a pickup, or hey, I want to switch my cart size, and all of this. And so as we put all these pieces together, we said, what would it take for us to roll out citywide compost as fast as we can? And that's really what prompted all of this and thinking about it and changes. So that's what you're going to see in 2025. To do that, we made some other service changes. So starting in January 6th, we are going to switch ourselves back to biweekly recycling. We think we have the capacity to do this. Our diversion is going well. We really feel strongly that we'll keep there. The reason we think we can do this are a couple things. One, around the city, the carts are about half full of recycling, so we know we have capacity in the carts. And if I could say anything to your listeners, please break down your boxes in your carts. Break them down. And when I say break them down,
you guys not work in retail ever? Come on.
Doesn't mean make them flat. That also means tear them apart so they don't jam in your recycling and we can't lift it out. But for people who want and think they're Uber recyclers, we'll bring you a second cart though. So we will do that. As we do that, we are then going to roll out citywide compost to the rest of the city, and we're going to finish it by March 15th. And what that also means is we are taking the parts of the city that we believe will be very high opt-inners. So central Denver, southeast Denver, east Denver, and others. In fact, we think we'll probably be handing out upwards of 40 to 50,000 carts in about 6 weeks. So we are going to be doing that. And because we're making some of these shifts with the other, we will be able to start all of those services. And then frankly, we need to own it and do well then. We want to make sure, and I'm sure many of your listeners experienced this, used to be that we would try to hit like 95% of the time. If we say you were going to pick up your cart, we pick up your cart on that day. And we were getting down more to like 90%. And frankly, that's a customer service level that we didn't love. So we're hoping that with all of this, we'll be able to sort of ratchet ourselves back up into that customer service level, deploy citywide compost, because we know that the city has capacity to meet its diversion goals. And compost is one of the ways that we're going to do that. And then we're going to get you back into the system and make sure that you're a part of it.
I'm ready. I'm ready.
Right,
I really am
ready
tired of throwing banana peels in the trash. But last question. This is something we get from our listeners all the time. So many folks are renters here or live in multifamily units, apartments. Right. Are they going to get compost too?
They are not part of our system, but what we will explain. So we service about 180,000 customers citywide. Those are usually single-family homes and multifamily units up to about 7 units. If you're in a big apartment or others, that is private services to supply you and that. There is part of a program called Waste No More and others, which was passed by the citizens a little bit ago, which we're in the process of continuing to look at about how we implement and that kind of thing, but are asking people to include recycling and compost at those buildings. And so this is something that as far as the city's overall goals for diversion and how we want to achieve that. In fact, our goal is that by 2027, we've diverted 50% of our trash. Just to give you a sense of it, if you were an individual right now, you can divert about 75% of your trash. 25% of it's in your recycling side, about 50% in your compost, especially if you have a single family home with yard and stuff like that. As a city right now, we're at about 20% in our recycling, which is pretty cool. Compost, we're about 6%. So we've got a ways to go as we get there, but that's what we're striving for. And we hope that others will join in with us on that.
Amy Ford, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
That's all for today here on CityCast Denver. If you enjoyed this show, why not take a minute to tell your neighbor who needs to shovel their sidewalk about us? Rate the show wherever you get your podcasts and subscribe to our morning newsletter and learn more about us at denver.citycast.fm. And just a note, we're off for the rest of the week. We'll be back in your feeds on Monday, December 2nd. See you then. We used to have the Music Buzz Minute with Groovy and Bree. Oh, rest in peace, Groovy. And the guy that produced it for the radio station was like old school, and he had a whole board that had like boing, like sound effects and stuff. So when I came on the show, they played the Daria theme song. La 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 la.